Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we have the calling champion Tyler Horspool. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
How's it been after winning the calling? Have you been riding on a high still, or is it starting to come down a little?
It's still definitely a high. Haven't been playing as much since then, but I'm still riding that. Yeah, mostly because I'm just riding that high still of I can't believe I won.
Yeah, I totally understand. And also, after you play a bunch of a game, sometimes you need like a day or two break after. Like you can definitely. You don't want to get burnt out right after playing a weekend, especially when you know you're going to other callings and stuff after.
Absolutely. I do plan on playing pre-releases this weekend, which is super exciting to finally get. I didn't get to play any of the Tales of Aria because I was so focused on the main event. And so it'll be excited to play with some of the new stuff.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that too. I saw your interview with Kitchen Table, and shout out to that. Everyone should go watch that interview. But you talked about in that interview how you're actually more of a limited player. So I can see you're definitely excited. I'm sure to play some sealed, and definitely some draft.
Yeah, oh yeah. Draft is my jam if I had to choose between the two. Uh, there's so much more decision making and so much more ways to out skill gap your opponents because you not only do you get to out skill gap them when you're playing, but also while you're deck building and choosing the cards. So I'm pretty hype, even playing sealed, but especially when draft comes out in 2.5 weeks or so.
Yeah, and I know you like me. I'm going to nationals. I'm sure you'll be at nationals now. They just announced it's 5 rounds of classic constructed and 3 rounds of draft for each day, and that's going to be an awesome format. I'm sure you're excited for that. It's like a nice mix of each.
Yeah, it's right where I want. I mean, if it was 4-4, it would be even better. But I understand why draft has to be 3 rounds. So,
Yeah. No,
uh,
but that's awesome. So let's talk about your journey into Flesh and Blood. I know you're pretty new based on that last interview. Talk about just for people on this interview, how did you get into the game? Like you were a magic, like a grinder before. What got you into Flesh and Blood?
yeah. So I had a group of friends that mostly played other games. They played like Dragon Ball Super, and then they played the Transformers TCG when that came out. And I was pretty much like, nah, these aren't like I would play them a little bit, but these aren't the games for me. I'm more of a Magic Homer, I guess. And then this game came out, and they were like, "You got to try it. You got to try it." I'm like, "Those last games didn't work out for me so much." And then once I really gave it one game, and I already knew that this was a game worth pursuing. This was a game I was going to fall in love with, and it didn't take long. It was kind of love at first play kind of thing.
Yeah, and this game definitely seems to have worked out for you so far. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps. It helps when you're winning to stay motivated. But that being said, even if I wasn't winning, I'd still be playing, and I'll probably still be playing for hopefully years to come.
Awesome. Yeah, so you've only been playing for about 2 months now. Were you nervous when you were like prepping for the event when you showed up to the calling? Were you nervous at all, like in your own head at all about like I've only been playing for 2 months. Some of these people have been playing since it came out in 2019.
I wasn't thinking about it's only been 2 months. I was more nervous because I did feel that I had something special with the deck even before I started playing. And I was nervous that maybe somewhere something goes wrong with the process, right? I tested something wrong and this matchup is actually bad or something like that. That was what was going through my mind. And honestly, I hadn't even thought that I had only played for 2 months until it got brought up on I think on fabtcg was the first time I saw that, and I was like, you know what? I've only been playing for 2 months. I
Yeah.
forgot. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, I sent the message to you for about this interview during your quarterfinals match or your quarterfinals match, because you were kind of like the hero all weekend. I don't know if you've thought about this. I think you were on coverage like 4 or 5 times out of the 15 matches that were
I
actually
was actually on
shown.
coverage 6 times.
6 times. That's yeah. I was trying
Yeah.
to count the number. You were on coverage a lot of times, and in their article that LSS put out, you were kind of portrayed as the forces of light. They like actually portrayed you as that fighting against the forces of like shadow on chain. Did you feel kind of like the people's champion? Like, did you feel that energy that they were putting behind you?
I did a little bit, but I think it was less about, like, oh, I'm the fan favorite and more like um I'm the one who has to pick up the mantle by default because all these chain players are smashing everyone else. I'm the one that has to take care of business kind of thing. And yeah, I kind of knew in my head, especially the quarterfinals were still going on after. So my quarterfinals match had finished, and then the other it was chain chain versus chain mirror was the other quarterfinals because they kind of staggered them. And
Hmm.
so there was those two chain players, and then the other two semifinalists that had already been decided were also chain. And so it was basically four chains and me at that point. And so at that point I was like, oh man, like I guess I'm it. This is it. I have to be the one. Um, not that I did feel a little bit of pressure at that point, but I didn't feel like this is a reason to give me more pressure in my head. I just
Yeah.
felt like this is kind of fun. This is a fun thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Twitch chat all weekend and people were definitely loving you. I think that the general consensus was against Chain because people just had enough of that deck. The ability, the power level it has is kind of insane compared to a lot of the rest of the decks in the format. So people were a little like not in love with Chain anymore. So I could tell the energy was definitely like get them. Like your deck was just crushing Chains. You went 7-1 right against Chain that weekend. So you were just cruising against them.
Yeah, and honestly, it should have been 8-0. In my one loss, which was to Joe Cologne on the very last round of Swiss, um, let me paint the picture for you. I guess I'm at one life. He has an invert existence in his graveyard, or and in his banish. Sorry, and then he's attacking with an exude confidence. I block with a herald and then have plans to block with a soul shield, but then I realize that I'm just dead to the invert existence, and so I end up letting the exude hit me, thinking I'm dead anyway. And then I later look through my graveyard there or my discard, and there's no non-attack action. So I was gonna
Mm,
live, and he had no more gas left, so he was never doing another damage to me that game. And so it should have been 8-0, but I'll take the 7-1 definitely. And a lot of those seven were not close. So this is definitely a chain killer kind of a deck. And my only sad point is I don't get to play it more because Tales of Aria is coming out.
yeah, yeah, we'll talk about the deck in a second. I'm just gonna bring up a few more things about like your experience after. Has your life felt changed? Have you had any new opportunities? Like, how's it felt in your life? I mean, it's only been a few days after. What's the shift been like after winning this event?
It's been pretty insane. I have an interview lined up every single day from I think Tuesday was my first interview, and I have interviews and write-ups lined up until Monday. And so that's pretty insane because I've never even done one interview before for any podcast or YouTube channel. So thank you for the opportunity because it's already been a blast, and even just doing this right now is surreal.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and I appreciate you coming on. I'm like a smaller channel, so I felt like lucky to have you come on. But yeah, it definitely shows. I mean, our community is still small. Everyone's really close too. Like the Flesh and Blood community is just kind of built different in terms of how it
It
is compared
really
to
is.
other communities. Yeah. So my last question. I hope this isn't a rude one. Do you plan on selling the tunic, the gold foil tunic, or are you holding on to it?
I have already given it to its new owner and sold it. Yeah, so it's pretty much a done deal. It was a friend, so um, once he gave me a price that I was happy with. This is not a card that unfortunately I can't afford this card to hold it. So
Yeah.
it has a new owner, and at least I know where it is.
Yeah, that's it's good to sell to someone you know, right? You can always be like, "Can I just get a peek at it? I just want to see it again." You'll see it
Yeah.
around once in a while. Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna move into talking about the deck now. We're gonna talk about. I mean, let's say you kind of revolutionized this deck, right? This was a control deck that had been around. Control Prism was a thing, or Prism a thing, but it had a pretty awful conversion rate in Road to National season. Like Prism didn't appear to be doing well, and I saw you even talk about in the interview after the calling live on the Twitch channel how a podcast had talked about how like bad Prism was and that made you want to play it. So Prism just wasn't doing well in general. What made you want to pick her up?
Yeah, so I liked it because in my meta, Bravo is everywhere. Bravo is the most dominant deck. Yes, there's Chains here too. Chains probably the second most popular deck, but Prism was just beating Bravo up and down the chart if played right, and so I wanted a great matchup into the most played deck here. And then with the Chain matchup, I felt like it was kind of like a 40-60 deal with the Heralds that I was playing at the time. And so this is what made me originally want to pick up the deck. And then what made me want to pull the trigger for the calling was when I found, when I tried out, it said the aggro plan isn't working. Let's try out this defense reaction strategy. And then I was like, ooh, we got something here. And that's when I knew.
Yeah, and people might think that Bravo's a bad matchup because he can break Phantasm, but you don't really care about that, right? You're playing auras that turn off his whole turn every turn, so he doesn't really get to play the game much for Bravo at least, does he?
Exactly. And there's a lot of decks like that. Dorinthia is another one where you're just like, oh, I'm licking my chops to play that.
Yeah, she's never getting a Dawnblade counter. It's not happening. She's not getting that. So yeah, let's talk about the matchups actually. So you said you had a 40-60 matchup you thought against Chain. Obviously that was not the case by the time you went to the calling. What did you feel like were your bad matchups? Like what were you scared to hit? I heard you talk about maybe some Katsu. Was there anything that you were like you actually thought you were gonna lose if you fought it?
Yeah, so there's actually one that I didn't talk about on Kitchen Table. So the I am actually going to say that there's three matchups I didn't want to play. Uh, Dash being like kind of a middle-ish matchup, so I'm kind of throwing that in there. But the two that I actively don't want to play are Katsu because of the Kadachi. They can just clear my auras and then Kadachi sorry, the spectral shields and then Kadachi the aura at the end, and it just creates a nightmare for me because and then all of their things are kind of hard to block. You don't want to be playing a bunch of three stuff when they're attacking for fives and fours.
Yeah.
And then the one that I actually didn't actively want to play, and I did play also in the calling, was a Prism Mirror. I didn't have any friends that played Prism, so this was a hard matchup for me to get testing in for it. And I did play it on camera, and I misplayed so heavily from the get go. You can see me play a library. I had friends yelling at me like, "Why do you still have library in?" afterwards. And the problem is that I don't have many ways to break Phantasm in my deck. I just have the three Celestial Cataclysms, with none of which I drew, by the way, in the matchup. You can see me trying to draw a Cataclysm, and it just never pops up. And then their aggro heralds are just bigger than mine because they're playing red ones or Phantasm Clasm and these kind of cards, and I'm not set up to deal with that.
Yeah, it is
So
kind
these
of
are the
funny.
these are the three. Yeah,
It is kind of
yeah,
funny
it's
that your
kind of funny.
weakness is yourself, right? Because you can't block. You pretty much can't pop Phantasm like you were saying, except for those. You don't run like CNC like some prisms do. You don't run like since your illusions can't pop other illusions. You're kind of sitting there just having to three block them out, which is really inefficient. With how 1 for 7 Wartune Herald is not an efficient three block to use with your block. So it's a little like yeah, I can see how that, funnily enough, would be a bad matchup for you to face. But in that
Yeah.
library play, I think afterwards it definitely against an aggro prism deck is not the play, right? You're taking that out in the future, maybe.
It was actually funny because the original plan was to keep it out, but during the game, it kind of worked out a little bit. The problem was we kept passing the priority back on who was librarying and who was not.
Gotcha.
And so if I could pay attention to that more, there might be a way to kind of break that in the mirror. But yeah, I think you're right. For the most part, I'd want to still take it out.
Yeah, I think it might be scarier to give the aggro deck more gas than the control deck in terms of like you kind of want to attrition them out and you're just giving them free gas to on attrition. But I mean, I'm sure that takes a lot more testing. You were saying you hadn't tested a bunch against Prism, so
Correct. Yeah.
yeah. So awesome. So and then what made you feel like you fixed the chain matchup? You were like it was obviously a great matchup, but chain was already like it was like a 40-60. Like Prism didn't crush it per se. Like what made you feel like you that matchup was all of a sudden swung in your favor?
So the thing that I was doing that no other Prism is was doing or is doing is the defense reaction strategy. You don't see this stack of defense reaction. You might see like three sync belows or something, but you're not seeing nine defense or the full Fate Foreseens, the full sync below, these impenetrable beliefs and the sigils all in there. And I'm also playing main deck impenetrable beliefs that are even like so if I'm playing Dorinthia, you'll still see me with two impenetrable belief just because that matchup is so good that I can afford to have a couple bad blues in my deck to for other matchups. And so the other strategies that usually pop up if you're playing auras are you have a couple of red heralds to try to race, or you're playing so many blues because you want to really play those auras heavily. And so the defense reaction strategy was the new thing. And I knew that I had come on to something special because I have three friends that play chain, and I started beating them. That's really what it came down to, and I was like, oh, okay. we got it.
Yeah, when I saw your deck first get pulled up and I saw like three sigils, I don't think I'd ever seen a Prism deck with like sigils, fates, and like Sing Spiel up before, and like you were saying, and I was like, this is full control. There is no aggression to this deck. Like you are blocking the entire day, and yeah, you did it. You blocked the entire day. I mean, you fatigued. How would you ever want to call it? You know, you fatigued out pretty much all of these chains. And
Yeah,
it definitely worked. And I had never thought of taking up main board slots for a matchup because you know it won't hurt your other matchups as much. Like the impenetrable belief thing, that's such a smart logic. Like I can give up, like even though it's gonna hurt my other matchup slightly, it'll improve the boogeyman matchup so much that you're like, it's not a big deal. It's a blue anyways, right? So it's not like the end of the world. But yeah, that's
exactly.
really smart.
You end up pitching these things anyway, as you know, and so I think this is somewhere where a lot of people can actually improve their deck building.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see your deck building too in the draft season. Very excited for draft in general. So, yeah, very excited for the next callings. I'm sure we'll definitely have our eyes on you for those. Um, and what actually on that note, what are you looking forward to in Tales of Aria? Are you gonna play any of the heroes, any heroes that you're looking for, or is it mostly the sealed that you're really liking, or what's going on with Tales of Aria for you?
Yeah, so I've started deck building, just fooling around a little bit, and so far I'm old time homer. I'm going to be a sucker for the control decks right off the bat. Um, and I always look for things that are off the beaten path because Prism Auras is just one of the wonkiest decks that you can play. You're not really attacking or defending. You're kind of like aura stacking, which is something completely different.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for those kind of strategies. And right now I'm looking at these auras that make you discard basically whenever you want. And so the idea is that you try to stack these auras and then make your opponent discard for a big turn, kind of deal, while blocking out the rest. And so that's what I'm trying to look for. I'm trying to look for right now. I'm sure I'll get a couple other ideas like that throughout the thing, but this is always what I'm looking for, is something that other people aren't looking for, because that's what you can try to break.
And do you think this is like we're just speculating right now, but do you think your like control prism build or chain are gonna have legs still in Tales of Aria? What do you see with for the CC format if you can foresee any of those changes right now this far out?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm on board with everybody else in saying that um, these discard effects are going to be really terrible for Chain. I mean, Chain is always known as a deck that can still operate on one blue, but it doesn't want to be consistently operating on one blue every turn. And so these discard effects are going to be big game against Chain. And then you also have an aggro deck in Lexi that you can build in multiple ways that looks really good against Chain as well. And not only that, these cards are kind of a little bit overpowered. I think that just that in general is going to pull down a little bit on both decks. But of the two decks, I think that Chain is going to be falling down a little bit further, and Prism is more. It has more tools to play against discard effects because I can play at instant speed, and most other decks can't.
Yeah, I do think it's nice that Prism doesn't really care about these frostbite tokens because you can pass and they pop on your turn and then play your auras on your opponent's turn. So the frostbites don't really affect you at all, and they actually pop merciful retribution and deal damage when they pop, which is pretty funny. So you can
Yeah,
if they're frostbiting you a bunch, you just pass your turn and your merciful retribution pings the enemy for a bunch for playing their deck. So yeah, I think Prism will do. I definitely agree. I think Prism will survive a bit better than Chain. I guess I shouldn't be weird for the chain players. They've been doing good all road Nat season. They can move on to a
yeah.
different deck, but awesome. Yeah. So thanks for talking to me. Any shout outs you want at the end of the video here?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my kids that I teach out at St. Hyacinth Academy, and waving to the kids out there. And if you're watching this, I'm still thinking about you. I'm about to lesson plan after this, so
That sounds great. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me. I'll see you guys next time. Like, comment, subscribe, and congrats for winning again, Tyler.
thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks. Bye.